someone just sent me a message a minute ago that said, hey, they noticed that the morning speakers, all three of them, were English professors, and the afternoon speakers are people who are looking at Tolkien from different fields and other ways of thinking about Tolkien. So we had Will the artist, Craig the philosopher, and we're about to have an IT person talk to us about how Tolkien, the connections between what he does and Tolkien's work. And I thought, that's actually a very good observation. So our next speaker is Matt Green, who teaches IT at Waukesha County Technical College in Waukesha, Wisconsin. He is also a student at Northwind Seminary, where Charlie Starr also teaches. Matt is a student working towards his doctorate in ministry in the context of education. And while his specialization at work is software design, his interest in Tolkien began actually when he was a child. And I am totally riffing here, so Matt, you can correct me if I am wrong, but I think it started when he was pretty young and he watched the Rankin Bass Hobbit cartoon with his little sister and some other members of the family. And his little sister had a loose tooth that day. I just thought I'd throw that out there. And anyway, so Matt is particularly interested in Tolkien's approach to technology. And his talk is titled Navigating Technology with Tolkien. Is there anything else I should say?
No, that's good. Thank you.
Take it away.
Okay.
This talk on Tolkien and technology interests me because I've written a chapter on Lewis and technology, so we could maybe do a collaboration.
That sounds great. Okay. I'm actually very interested in that. So one of the first things, I've been listening to all the other speakers, and one of the first things I want to note is when I was in high school, I took computer classes and some art classes. And my senior year in high school, I had to decide which way to go. And after seeing Will's art, I definitely made the right decision. I was so impressed with the artwork that Will shared with us. Some of that stuff, especially that one of the spider, was just stunning. Now, there's a large body of writing on Tolkien and modernity, and a pretty decent body on Tolkien and technology. And while I reviewed that before I made this presentation and wrote a similar paper, I'm not going to try to share everything there. What I want to focus on is what Tolkien said or shared that helps us navigate our personal decisions related to technology. So as we write the story of our lives, I want to emphasize that we should be making intentional decisions, especially in our use of technology. And I'll get into that quite a bit as we go forward. So that is what the parts of Tolkien I'll be focusing on. So while I was introduced to Tolkien at a young age, I also took a college course my sophomore year in Tolkien at Illinois Central College. Mike Foster was the instructor. He has spoke at this conference before. He started the course by saying you could be taking accounting or economics or calculus, but you're not. You're in my elective class. I looked at my desk, and those were the very 3 books I had on my desk. I just wondered to myself, is this going to be for me? Should I even be taking a literature class? Not sure what to think. And I looked, he wasn't making eye contact, so I don't know if he noticed I had the same books he just said. As the course progressed, it was clearly for me, and I definitely belonged in a literature class. I followed that up by taking his course the following year on fantasy literature, and he had the same spiel, and I had different books on my desk, like Accounting 2 and Calc 2 and Economics, Macroeconomics. In very many ways, I actually model a lot of my teaching off how Mike taught literature. I try to teach as much as I can software development, web development, mobile app development in a similar way with the same enthusiasm, the same imagination, and the same passion. I am coming from this point of view as a technologist, so I'm just going to make the case that I can call myself that. That started at a really early age. When I was really young, and all the way past till college, we showed up as a family to church at least a half hour early because Dad ran the out of visual department at our church. And so we were putting little film projectors or film strip projectors in all the rooms because much better than Final Graphs. In the early 80s, I started programming. 82, 85, 86 is when I really started. My dad did not show me how to fix a car. He showed me how to program a computer. It was my undergrad. I had 2 different programs, both computer and programming related. I did serve in that field for many years. The last 11 years, I've been a college instructor in that same field. Even my master's is in education, but it's all focused around technology. It's in my blood. Dad was a computer programmer for roughly 50 years, but also when we look at technology, we're also talking about technological advancement. So part of that is the changing of the landscape that is needed for technological advancement. My dad worked where tractors were made. He worked at corporate headquarters for Caterpillar Tractors. My grandpa was an iron worker. He built dams that produced the electricity that we need to do the technology and the things that we are looking to do. So for me, as a technologist, these are beautiful pictures. There's a tractor. Those are 2 dams that that grandpa worked on. In fact, I'm going to take that even farther. My guess is most people, when they see the black gate, the gates of Mordor, their effective response is disgust, maybe even a little fear. I think that's what it's supposed to do. Not mine. I thought it was pretty cool looking. I was looking there and saying, we could put a farmer's market over there, boutique coffee, yoga right in the middle. I'd be right at home. So that's where I'm coming from. I am a technologist, and that's really where my mindset is from. I also volunteer as a technologist. I serve with a private all-boys high school as the STEM curriculum advisor and the IT infrastructure advisor. I have a coordinated program where my students train computer trainers in Bangladesh via Zoom and a tool called Moodle to improve their computer skills. And my school students get their global experience and the experience of training someone else. It's just a win-win-win. It's an amazing program. I think has a lot of upside coming forward. Every Friday, or most Fridays, I join a weekly discussion with the Center for Humane Technology. I do want to talk about that for a moment. So this group, we're a group of technologists and educators and some business leaders. It's founded by lead architects and programmers from Google, Facebook, Twitter. And just like Oppenheimer, the individual who created the bomb, said, "Now I become death, the destroyer of worlds." These programmers, these technicians, these technologists look at Google, Twitter, Facebook, and say, what have I done? They quit those companies, start a nonprofit. They have a significant concern about the fact, several negative aspects of the technology. For them, it's largely the algorithms they wrote to feed us what we want. And that's all of them, all those sources. And the idea is that click is currency. These are terms that they say. Click is currency. What you see on Facebook, on Twitter, on Google responses, and it's getting to be front page of the different news sources, are what they think you will click. It's not necessarily the best match. It's what they think you will click. They have tens of thousands of people trying to figure out how to get you to spend your attention and your time clicking something. They don't care what it is. They want to make sure that they get paid for the click. And often at technological conferences that I go to, there's a saying that if the service is free, then you're the product. And what's the currency? It's the clicks. So as a technologist, that's our concern, is everyone's in a bubble. If you're letting a news feed, the front page of a news site, Facebook, Twitter, Google, choose what you read, then you are being fed what they think you will click. And that is what we have weekly discussions on, and discussions on what to do about it. So what am I doing about it? I'm speaking at a token conference about making our own decisions on how we use technology. So throughout my career, I've needed to make technological decisions. When I was a software developer, um, I was not a character in the story, but I was there when it happened. My company invented internet banking that I worked with, invented a lot of other banking technologies. And there were decisions I heard about that changed or directed how e-commerce worked for everyone. I know some of the people that made those decisions, and e-commerce would work a little differently if different decisions had been made. As an educator, how much technology I'm going to use versus other type of activities. As a parent, this is big, and I don't know many parents who feel like they've won the fight over screen time. Be it video games, be it social media, be it Netscape. The fight over screen time is a significant decision, and it does form our lives. What we do with our screen time, what we do with our attention, and how much time we do it. And also, we all make technological decisions as a consumer. So why token? What is that? Most technologists, that I know, if I were to say, let's look at literature or media for making decisions on technology, would refer to Jurassic Park. Should we have made those dinosaurs? Like, yes, just not those carnivores. Or should Frankenstein have made that monster? Like, he was a sad creature. I've always thought token. I'm thinking back to when I was in class and I read about the scourging of the Shire. I read about what happened to Isengard. And I was like, what did technology do to you? And what did technological advancement and we'll get to that. That's actually pretty clear. There's a clear answer to that. A why token? Well, for this group, we're all here after many, many hours listening to the token conference. So clearly we respect his writings and what he has to say about it. And he does have strong opinions about technology and how we should use it and how we should embrace it. And it's not unprecedented. I just find it fascinating. This, the founder of Greenpeace, the first mission, they're going to do something at a French nuclear power plant. And his quote about that experience was this: I've been reading The Lord of the Rings. I could not avoid thinking of parallels between our little fellowship and the long journey of the hobbits into the volcano-haunted land of Mordor. It's not precedented to look at Tolkien in these matters. For this presentation, while I read a lot on token modernity and a lot on token and technology, when it all boiled down, my primary source ends up being the letters of J.R. Tolkien. Secondary would probably be the stories. The letters of J.R. Tolkien may now be my favorite book. It is amazing. And if you haven't read it, read it. It is, it's so touching, his relationship with his son, how he just opens up about what he's thinking. It's to look in the mind of someone so brilliant and actually get to see what they're saying and thinking personally is just amazing. So that's the primary source. Tolkien actually added to the Oxford English Dictionary. So for technology, I want to say here's what I'm talking about using their definition, and that's machinery and equipment developed from the application of our knowledge, scientific knowledge. I have to twist that a little bit to match how any of us view technology. The word equipment is not just physical, or it wouldn't match how most people use the word now. It would also mean the software, the algorithms, whatever's behind making that equipment work. So there's a little more to it, but that would be the working definition. But just understand our use of the word equipment is very broad. There's a definition of science at the very end. I will mention Tolkien and science because it does wrap up with how I view we should navigate technology. Is going to look at his view on science. Okay. So at first glance, one would think Tolkien is not a fan of technology. I've even heard him referred to as a self-identified Luddite. And we're going to look at Tolkien's lens of technology and compare it to mine and kind of get where he's coming from And then we're going to navigate how he really views it to help us determine how we can navigate our choices on our use of technology. So don't close your eyes. This is a visual. The next slide is visual, but I want you to think in your mind the answer to this question. What does technology sound like? So for me, the technologist, my first thought, the first time I heard that sound in an Aer Lingus, I was on my way to cross the pond for the first time to Ireland. My first time to Ireland was the first time I ever got to see a real castle. Seeing a real castle changed how I enjoyed both Tolkien and Lewis's writings. Now, what might Tolkien think or answer to the question, what does technology sound like? Well, this is my answer for that. Tolkien served in World War II, experienced combat, and a sound like this would bring up pretty negative emotions for him. I have another set of sounds. For me, that means I can vacuum my floor and the dishwasher can wash my dishes and the laundry machine can wash my laundry all at the same time. And I'm not doing any of it. For Tolkien, here's another sound that he may say. The next page will describe that some more. So here's how Tolkien really feels about what that was. Fascinating. I'll read this quote. It would be unfair to compare the Forestry Commission with Sauron, because as you observe, it is capable of repentance. But nothing it has done that is stupid compares to the destruction, torture, and murder of trees perpetrated by private individuals and minor official bodies. The savage sound of electric saw is never silent wherever trees are still found growing. I would say that's a pretty strong reaction, negative reaction to the cutting of trees, which for some people would be viewed as progress. So now we can build and now we can have power, whatever. So yeah, it's a pretty strong reaction. That's why I threw that in there to justify that last slide. So there's a pretty big difference. I think of technology, the first thing I think of is I get to travel the world. I get to, things are more efficient. And Tolkien has some other thoughts. What does technology smell like? So think about it. What does technology smell like? Well, for me, I don't have the technology to let you smell this. I have diffusers like that. Electronic sends a smell into the air. I get to smell baked cookies a week after I baked them last. My kitchen smells like baked cookies. So does my bathroom. It's kind of odd. Tolkien, he looks at that and probably thinks London had enough struggles. It didn't need more. That I would think if you would ask Tolkien, what does technology smell like? Pictures like this would be in his head. This is Isengard. This is the Shire being scourged. There is a conundrum. Tolkien's lifestyle is completely based on a dependency on technology. So this is the kind of things that technologists say when we get together. So here's how this would work, this argument. So let's just go to cavemen. What did they do that Tolkien would enjoy? Well, they had the oral story, not without pointing sticks. If they didn't have pointing sticks to hunt with and to till the ground, they would not have had time for oral tradition, oral storytelling. They would be spending all the time gathering what little food they could find. Now, Tolkien was a writer and a reader of the written word that is extremely technologically dependent. Pen is technology, paper's technology, typewriter's technology, printing press, all technology. His love of the book, of the printed pen, of the paper, very based on technology. Tolkien was also, like a lot of us, a teacher, a professor. He had zero of his life was spent providing for food or shelter. Someone else did that. It takes advanced technologies to have a world where some people provide food and shelter and other people get to do other things. So here's a conundrum. Conundrum solved. Tolkien defined technology differently. So what I would think of technology, and when I read it and I see, wow, this guy doesn't like some things I do, he's defining it differently. We're going to explore that, and then we're going to come up with some conclusions that we can use in our everyday life. Now, as we start looking at how Tolkien describes technology, I want to look at how technologists view, one last chance at how we view technology, because it kind of ties in. Famous quote from Arthur Clarke's Third Law, related to writing a sci-fi, actually. But I hear this all the time. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Well, Tolkien will describe technology differently, define it differently, and he will define magic differently. But that's what we're looking at. As technologists, we are looking at making things, improving things, and creating things that is indistinguishable from magic. We're going to start using these words quite differently. So the little reading of his letters mostly, but looking elsewhere, I'm going to start by first dividing it into three ideas. Enchantment, which also encompasses art, magic, and the machine. And the machine is his main negative concern. And we're going to get into that in more depth than the other two. But we're going to look at all three. So enchantment. Now, before I go through this quote and parse this thing out, Tolkien does acknowledge that technically enchantment is based on chant, and it is the traditional definition of magic through words. Now, everything else I read from Tolkien, he actually defined it the way this is, where enchantment would come closer to the use of the word when someone describes being enchanted. So I just, you go to a place of nature, it's just had a very positive impact on you, you felt enchanted. So that's basically saying I felt like someone spoke some magic words and things were different for me by my experience. But so when Tolkien used the word enchanted, most of the time, he was not going to the technical magical side. He was really going more towards, well, we'll read this quote. Art is the human process that produces, by the way, it is not its only or ultimate objective, secondary belief. Art of the same source, if more skilled and effortless, the elves can also use, or so the reports seem to show. But the more potent and specially elvish craft, I will, for lack of a debatable word, enchantment. Enchantment produces a secondary world into which both designer and spectator can enter to the satisfaction of their senses while they are inside. But in it is artistic in desire and purpose. So I'm actually going to finish the sentence on the next slide, and it won't even be titled enchantment. It'll be titled magic. But as we look at this sentence, or quote, when Tolkien talks about enchantment, he's largely talking about what the elves could do. But he's talking about art. And I also believe he's talking about his work, literature. And a secondary world, a secondary place, something better, something a little bit different. Let's look at magic. Continuation of this quote, actually. Magic produces or pretends to produce an alteration in the primary world. It does not matter by whom it is said to be practiced. Fey or mortal, it remains distinct from the other two. It is not an art, but a technique. Its desire is power in this world, domination of things and wills. So there was a question that was very well answered in the last presentation about power. I do believe this quote also helps. Power is for domination of things and wills. And I would say that that is distinguished from influence. So we may be called to be responsible, to have a more responsibility or influence. That is not what Tolkien means by power. Clearly, what he means by power, it's something internal where you take that responsibility or influence and you use it to dominate things and wills. So not just in the big picture. So obviously Sauron was using magic to gain power, but Tolkien is pretty clear that anytime that we desire to gain power to dominate others, that would be negative, and that would be on something that he would not promote. So he, would look at individuals and say negative things about them, like Winston Churchill, and if you referred to it as power, it had to do with that. Tolkien had elevated roles. He was on the board for another college to pick the department head, and he had more responsibility and more influence, but he didn't use it to enhance his own personal status or power, or to subject his will on others. Now the primary thing that I would call technology, Tolkien calls that, well, there's two more things, but we'll get to that. The primary one is the machine. So these the big impactful quote is the next slide, but these are two I must talk about first. This first quote about the machine breaks the heart of a technologist, because our goal, usually, unless we're trying to gain power, is to make things better and more efficient and easier. So here's the quote: labor-saving machinery only creates endless and worse labor. So there's two reactions I have to that. Two thoughts I have on this is one. I'm going to go with his lens to his time. Obviously, someone who sewed, seamstress, tailor, had a much better lifestyle than someone who worked at a textile mill. Obviously, no one will argue that. So I could say that's all this quote means, and that we've outgrown this, and now our advancement in technology and efficiencies don't do this. I don't want to do that, though. I want us to use this as a caution as we look to be more efficient and try not to do this. So I think that's the best way to look at it, is to acknowledge in his time there was great examples of this being absolutely true. And I think as we move forward, let's make sure that we don't make this true in the future. Then the other quote before we get into the meaty ones: the maddest castle that ever came out of a giant's bag in a wild Gaelic story is not only much less ugly than a robot factory, it is also, to use a modern phrase, in a very real sense, a great deal more real. I didn't take all the quotes on this. It is not the only time where Tolkien looks at technology and sees or states that his stories are more real than that. So that's just, I'm not going to go farther with that one. I just couldn't skip it. That was quite important. So now let's look at some of the meaty quotes on the machine. This one is stunning. Tolkien is writing to his son, Christopher, who is in World War II. Tolkien experienced World War One. Now his son's in World War II. I can't imagine being a father and having your son in a war, especially if you had actually experienced one. But there we are. Or there he was. Before this quote, he talked about how he grieved what Germany did to themselves because he really appreciated that culture. And then he also said it was good that the Russians are about to take Berlin because this thing has got to stop. And there have been some really bad things that just have to stop. So it's interesting that he went from saying it's good to this quote. Well, the first war of the machines seems to be drawing to its final inclusive chapter, leaving, alas, everyone the poor, many bereaved and maimed and millions dead, and only one thing triumphant, the machines. As the servants of the machines are becoming a privileged class, the machines are going to be enormously more powerful. What's their next move? There's so much here, and I probably in a few months would be able to talk on this, this. It's such a fascinating quote. Why wasn't World War One the first war of the machines? I showed you that clip. That was a machine. Why did the machines be the only winner of World War II? Fascinating. What's their next move? All these are fascinating, but the sentence that probably one of the biggest warning is, as the servants of the machines are becoming a privileged class. All of this, just so much to absorb, and we're only going to use a few pieces of it later. Okay, so this thought that war of machines, what's their next move? And this was in his letters to his son Christopher. I declare that a lot of the literature, fantasy literature, that the technologists, my peers and me, enjoy, reinforce. This is like a prophecy of how we're going to see the world. And I'm showing you a bunch of movies. These are wars against the machine. These are the machines made their move. It's a pretty fascinating this quote and popular culture. This could be a whole presentation by someone who is much more understanding of movies than I am. Let's revisit that quote, though. I want to modernize it for what my specialties are. And I'm going to take great liberties and I'm going to reword it. Well, the first war of the algorithms, blah, blah, blah. Only one thing triumphant, the algorithms. As the servants of the algorithms are becoming a privileged class, the algorithms are going to be enormously more powerful. What's their next move? These are the kind of discussions we have on Fridays when I meet with the folks in Silicon Valley and from all over the world, educators and technologists, as we're concerned about this. And I'll tell you what we think some of the next moves are. So we all know Facebook, Google, Twitter decide what to show you based on what they think you will click. We're quite certain that some and more news sites will do that. So that if one person, I'm not going to name any news sites, if one person went to news site A and another person went to news site A, they won't be seeing the same articles. Probably already happening some, but it's kind of hard to prove. The other one that we're concerned about that we expect soon as a group that people talk about is customized titles. We know as technologists, because the browser tells Google that very few people read the second half of an article, and most people just read the title and the first sentence or two. We believe that there'll be customized titles to you. So even the same article will look different and put you more and more in a bubble. If you let the internet page for newspapers, news feeds, Facebook, Twitter, Google, choose what you read. So that's where we're at with this. I also believe there is another term that Tolkien doesn't really use, but is important if we're going to look at how Tolkien views technologies. I'm going to call them tools. These are the things that Tolkien doesn't think of as technology, is what I'm claiming. They're just there. They're not a machine. They're not meant to gain power. They're not meant to dominate or to suppress people's wills. I'm going to go with a picture that was already shown in another deck. I believe it was Sarah's. This is a drawing. She cropped out the main part for my presentation. This is a drawing Tolkien drew of Bagsend. If you look, there is a clock to the right and a thermometer or barometer to the left. It's interesting. I would not expect in Gondor to see clocks. I would not expect to see thermometers or barometers or umbrellas in Gondor or in Rivendale. Well, maybe Rivendale, but I'm not that surprised to see it in the Shire. Tolkien didn't really think of it that much. It's kind of out of place, but he doesn't care. Those are tools, swords. A sword could be enchanted. It could be magic. It could be a tool of war. But was the people used. Just a lot of things are really just tools. They're not really the machine. They're not magic. They're not enchanted. They're just tools. So the definition of technology that I use, I claim he breaks up into 4 different things. Another concern with technology that Tolkien, I think is pretty clear, is a concern of corruption. At first, I thought it was addiction, and I didn't think it was what's on the slide. I read a bit on Tolkien and addiction, and there is stuff people have written. It's quite interesting. I now call it corruption. So we'll start with the obvious. Let's just say Melkor's bioengineering took dark elves, made them orcs, took some Maya and made them Balrogs. So that's a corruption. Compare that to bioengineering if you want. The one, though, that I find fascinating, we're going to go back to that group that I meet with on Fridays. They produced a documentary that was on Netflix. I recommend everyone watch it. And it's called The Social Dilemma. That's the group that I'm talking about. And in this movie is a scene where a mother wants her family to have a lunch without electronics. So she has technology, a cookie jar with a timer. She takes her kids' phones, her husband's phone, her phone, puts them on the cookie jar. And she puts a timer for a half hour for the meal. A few minutes later, not much, her daughter grabbed the mallet, a meat mallet from a drawer in the kitchen, broke the cookie jar, and grabbed her phone. In that scene, I saw Gollum in the ring, my precious. Also, in the same storyline, this mom offered her son, I think $1,000 if he wouldn't touch his phone for a certain time period. He was all excited about it. He didn't make it very far. Once again, my precious. So there is the addictive part of technology. One, I don't want to harp on too much, but it's definitely a major part of people's lives. Video game playing can be very fun, can be very relaxing, but for some it's addicting. A couple places I'll mention that. A different college in town than I work at told their faculty about 8 years ago, maybe 6, that they no longer consider alcoholism the number one reason freshmen flunk out. They consider video addiction the number one reason. When South Korea had the Olympics, they actually had in their opening ceremonies a moment of silence for those who died from video game addiction. It is a thing. I like video games, and I have friends who write them. Here is the really interesting thing. I've been to seminars and conferences for educators, where we are looking at the techniques used by video games to addict players and trying to apply them to our education. So the idea is, well, if this gaming company can get people motivated to spend 12 hours straight at a screen, what can we do to get people, to do 2 hours of homework? And it's a whole field in education called gamification of education. Whether that's good or bad, not commenting at this point, but there is addictive nature of technology that I think we also need to be concerned about. So there is the picture of technology, Tolkien, where he's coming from. What I really want to talk about or get across, that was the groundwork, even though I only have 10 minutes left, and I have about 10 minutes left of material, is the navigating of it. What do we do with it? And before I can get to that, there's one little more piece. Tolkien and science. as a technologist, and I talk to my peers, what I find quite fascinating is that we're not that interested in the natural sciences as a group. I know some are, but I bet I would love to do this research. If you took 100 English and philosophy professors and 100 engineering professors and gave us quizzes on trees and flower and birds, we would either tie or the engineers would do worse. Now we're interested in rockets, we're interested in electronics, but I think we fail a little bit on the other area. I think it's because we are focused on specializations. We, even in our own fields, we're highly specialized. We expect scientists to be highly specialized. The idea of science for fun isn't really talked about that much. Tolkien loved nature. Now let's, but he didn't, there is a dark side to science when it's used to build the machines to gain power, to put dominion over others. But when science is used to experience awe, to experience wonder, to experience enchantment, that's what I think Tolkien would endorse. So I just kind of pulled some parts out of that definition of science and said, how about the practical activity of study of the natural world through observation? Took the rest of it out. So I have a bird feeder. Maybe I would enjoy it more if I'd figure out what birds are eating there. I like walking in nature. Maybe I should learn what trees there are. In fact, we get to trees. Tolkien really liked trees and flora and fauna. One author, his name is Patrick Curry, in Defending Middle-earth, stated that Tolkien identified 64 different species of flora in The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, and made up all these other ones that I've listed on the slide. Clearly, this was something he was interested in. He really is interested in trees. He started the legendarium with trees, and he ended it with tree. And there are a lot of trees in between. One even tried to eat the characters that would save the world. He was not naive on nature, though. There were characters that almost froze to death. There was a drowning. Nature could be violent. Nature was nature. Forests were characters. They weren't just settings. They had quite a bit of character. They were more than settings. So now I've talked as much as I can about Tolkien and how his view of technology is a little bit different than me, claiming that other technologists are similar to me. And so we've kind of explored that. What can we do with this information to help us navigate technology? I have 3 ideas. First, keep your tools as tools. Okay, so what else could they be? Well, it could be a machine. So your house should be something that protects you and your family. Maybe it enables you to host parties, maybe even to host other people, to bring joy in other people's lives and in your life. That's all great. That's a tool. But your house could also be a way to show off, to as a status symbol, a way to separate yourself from the world. That's more like a machine. Your car could be something that gets you to and from work, something that satisfies the needs of your family. You could even use it to help others. It could also be a status symbol, could also be used for power, could also be used to domain. Your job, you could use your job as a way to help others, both through the service you're paid to do and the money that you make. But you could also use it to subjugate others, show dominion, and satisfy that part of some people's, probably everybody's personality to an extent. So keep your tools. Don't let them be corrupted into machines. And that also, my next one is keep your tools. Now, avoid letting technology corrupt you. That gets into the addiction and the corruption. And also, if there's a lot of things in your life that you really have become things that you use to show dominion over others, then you are being corrupted. if your screen time changes how you view things because of what you choose to watch, if you can't live without your phone and you just are living a different life, that is what I would call a corruption. So keep your tools, avoid letting your technology corrupt you, and embrace natural science. Find the wonder, find something in creation that that really can be a positive impact on your life. There's so much you can enjoy there. And in this pandemic, in the winter, the snow outside for me right now is up to my waist. I'm in Wisconsin, and in the pandemic, I've spent quite a bit of time in my house. I need to intentionally embrace the natural world, but it's cold outside. I'm stuck in a house, and the Science Channel is not the same as going into the woods and having a hike. All these, I really believe Tolkien would clearly endorse. I think he probably thought they were unnecessary because he lived his life very, very well. I would say Tolkien, his success as a writer, success as a scholar, but he also had family and he really had friends. And so when we really look to Tolkien on how we should make decisions and how we should navigate our lives, especially our embracement and use of technology, I want to finish off with what Tolkien really valued. And I'm going to say, there's the end of the story. There's Tolkien and his wife's tomb. I see trees there. I see nature. I also see Berian and Luthien. The most romantic story Tolkien wrote, possibly one of the most romantic stories ever written. Looks to me like he's claiming that was his life. So when I look at Tolkien and what he valued, I see nature, I see trees, I see not putting dominion over others. I see people like Aragorn risking their lives to help others out. And I see, finally, love. That was how I would wrap this up. So, I'm wrapped it up with.
So, thank you, Matt. I've got one question that came in for you,
Okay.
and it's actually very similar to another question. So I'm going to see if I can kind of squish the two together in one. Give me just a second here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Actually, just a couple other questions popped up. So the first question I'm going to say is, Dr. Boyd talked about bad power. Could you say something that would kind of connect what you're saying to what he was saying?
Yeah, so I actually, when I had that slide, I was hoping I was making that point. So in one of the quotes, but it's consistent with other quotes, he said power is putting dominion over others, suppressing their will, the desire to domain over others. So like I said, there's a difference between increased responsibility and influence and dominating others. And bad power would be dominating others, and good power would be influence and extend responsibility to the benefit of others. I hope that's right, but that's my answer.
Excellent.
Okay, now my paper is actually a little bit different than this, and it's not done yet. This I made a very personal conversation. My paper is a little more on some of the topics, diving deeper. The Palantir and the ring are Palantir and the ring are definitely technology, and they are magic. Now Tolkien also said hobbits wrote these books. So like Aragorn's magical ability to heal looked like magic to a hobbit, but to the elves, it's just the guy knew nature and how to. And there might be a little bit more, the healing touch of royalty, blah blah blah. But Tolkien did say that the books were written from the hobbit's point of view, and they saw things as enchanted magic that really weren't. And someone else said earlier, Tolkien did not put the kind of magic in this book like Harry Potter. I mean, there isn't as much magic as you think. There is different levels of understanding of how things work. Now, there is some magic and there's enchantment. Use those words all over the place. But yeah, so the ring and the Palantir are both, they become machines. I think the Palantir originally was made for good, wasn't it?
Yes, the Palantir came from Numenor, so we know they're originally good, right?
So they were corrupted.
That happens.
So that's the wrap in the whole corruption. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. What else?
Actually, I'm going to say it is 3:50, which is when your talk ends. So, Matt, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hopefully, this gave a lot of people a different way to think about some of what Tolkien says about technology. Do look at the chat. There's some really